Take anything you like. This table in front of me, your own hand. A glass of plain water. Now picture smashing it, grinding it, splitting it in half and in half again, thousands of times, millions of times, until at last you are holding the smallest possible piece, the little speck that cannot be broken any further. The brick. The final, hard, indivisible brick that the whole world is built from. Everybody knows about these bricks. The ancient Greeks guessed at them. Your school teacher drew them on the board. It may be the single most useful idea anyone has ever had in all of science. And it is wrong. There are no bricks. The universe is not built out of tiny hard pieces stacked together. And in the next little while I want to take that comfortable picture, the one you have carried around in your head since you were a small child, and I want to dismantle it, gently, one piece at a time, until there is nothing left of it. And then I want to show you what is really down there instead. Because what is really down there is far stranger than bricks, and far more beautiful. Let me start by doing the opposite of what I just promised. Let me convince you that the brick idea is right, because it is a magnificent idea, and you ought to feel its full force before I lay a single finger on it. Begin with the simplest thing in the world. You have a lump of gold, and you cut it in half. Both halves are still gold. Cut again, still gold. Your knife gets sharper and sharper in your imagination, and you keep going. The old thinkers asked a beautiful question about this. Can you do it forever? Or do you reach a point where one more cut gives you something that is no longer gold at all? Some of them, more than 2,000 years ago, said yes, there must be a smallest piece. They called it the uncuttable thing. In their language, the word was atom, the thing that cannot be divided. For a long time, that was only a clever guess. Then it turned out to be true, or true enough to shake the world. When the chemists got to work, everything they saw fell into place the moment they imagined matter as little particles joining and separating. Water is two small things of hydrogen latched onto one of oxygen. Salt is one kind of atom holding hands with another. Burn it, freeze it, dissolve it, blow it apart, and underneath everything the atoms are only rearranging, like dancers swapping partners, never made, never destroyed, only shuffled around. You can almost catch them in the act. Drop some fine grains of pollen into still water and watch them through a microscope. The little grains jiggle and twitch and wander, never resting, as if they were alive. But they are not alive. They are being kicked constantly from every side by the water particles slamming into them, invisible, too small to see, but big enough in their crowd to shove a grain of pollen around like a beach ball in a stadium. That restless dance is the atoms, made visible to your eye. After you have watched that, only a very stubborn person could go on doubting them. I will tell you how much I love this idea. If some catastrophe wiped out all scientific knowledge, and I could pass along just one single sentence to whatever creatures came after us, I would not hesitate for a moment. I would tell them this. All things are made of atoms, little particles that move about in endless motion, attracting one another when they are a little apart, but pushing away when they are squeezed too close together. In that one sentence there is an enormous amount of information about the world, if you only apply a little imagination and thinking. So there it stands, the brick idea in all its glory. It tells you why ice melts and why steam pushes on the lid of a kettle. It tells you why metal is hard and why air is thin. It works. It works so well that you would be a fool to doubt it. The world is made of little particles. Case closed. Now let me start pulling on the threads. Here is the first one. Those Greeks chose the word uncuttable. But when we finally found the atom, the real atom, the thing that makes up the gold and the oxygen and you, we discovered something a little embarrassing about it. It cuts. The atom is not a solid brick at all. It is almost entirely empty space. Sitting in the very middle there is a tiny dense knot, the nucleus, and it is fantastically small compared with the whole atom. If you blew one atom up to the size of a great cathedral, the nucleus would be a single grain of salt floating somewhere up near the ceiling, and way out at the edges, whirling around in all that emptiness, are the electrons. So the atom, the famous thing that could not be cut, turns out to be mostly nothing, with a speck at the center and a few specks far away. Fine, you say. So the Greeks were off by one step. The atom cuts. But surely those smaller pieces, the nucleus and the electrons, surely those are the real bricks. For a while it looked that way. Then we looked harder at the nucleus and found it was itself built out of smaller things packed together, the protons and the neutrons. So those are the bricks. Except, when we looked harder still, smashing protons apart in enormous machines, we found that a proton is not solid either. It has three smaller things rattling around inside it. We call them quarks. You begin to see the pattern. Every single time we point at something and announce, this one, this is the smallest, this is the final brick, we sharpen our tools, we look a little closer, and the brick cracks open and spills out smaller things. It has happened over and over and over. So a reasonable person might say, all right, the quarks and the electrons, the ones we cannot split any further, those must be the true bricks, the real bottom of the whole pile. We simply had to dig far deeper than the Greeks ever dreamed. And perhaps that is so. But before we go crowning the electron as the final brick of creation, let me ask the most innocent little question I can think of. The kind of question a child asks. It is such a simple question that grown physicists sometimes forget to ask it out loud. How big is an electron? A brick has a size. You can measure it. It has a width, a height, edges, a surface, an inside and an outside. So the electron, if it really is a tiny brick, must have a size too. A radius, some small distance across the middle of it. We went looking for that size. We took electrons and we hurled them at each other, harder and harder, at higher and higher energies, the way you might fire two marbles together to feel how big they are by how hard they bounce. If the electron had any size at all, if it had any structure, any edge, any surface, then when we hit it hard enough, the bouncing would change. We would feel that surface. We never felt a thing. As far down as anyone has ever managed to look, and believe me, we have looked extraordinarily hard, the electron has no size at all. No width, no edges, no inside. In our very best description of nature, the electron is simply a point, a place where there sits a definite charge and a definite mass, and no extent whatsoever. Now stop, and feel how strange that really is. A building block with no size is not a building block. You cannot stack points on top of one another. You cannot build a wall out of things that take up no room. A point has no faces to glue together, no inside to fill, no outside to press against the next one. And yet here is the electron carrying its mass and its charge, doing all the work of making you and me and the stars, and it has no size. The brick, the very instant we look at it closely, simply is not there. We reached out for the smallest piece and our fingers closed on nothing. And think what this does to that old, proud word. The Greeks wanted the uncuttable thing. Well, the electron is uncuttable, all right. But not because it is a tiny hard pebble too tough to break apart. It is uncuttable because there is nothing there to cut, not in the way they pictured. You cannot slice a point in half. There is no such thing as half of a point. So the size has gone funny on us. Let me now show you something else that has no business being true if these are little objects. Every electron is exactly the same as every other electron. I do not mean similar. I do not mean close. I mean identical, perfectly, with no difference at all that anyone has ever been able to find. The same mass, down to as many decimal places as our finest instruments can measure. The same charge, exactly. The same in every single property they have. The electron sitting in the tip of my finger, and an electron buried inside a star at the very edge of what our telescopes can see, are not two careful copies that came out nearly alike. They are the same in a way that nothing built by anyone has ever been. Think about what that would mean down in a factory. Suppose I told you I had a machine that stamps out little balls, and that I had made a trillion of them, and every single one was identical to perfect precision, not one of them a hair wider or a whisker heavier than the rest. You would not believe me. You would say it cannot be done. 2 grains of sand are never the same. 2 ball bearings, measured finely enough, always differ a little. Anything made of parts, anything assembled or stamped or poured, carries the tiny scars of its making. No 2 are ever truly identical. But the electrons are. Every last one of them. And no one built them in any factory. So how does nature manage to turn out countless trillions of perfectly identical somethings scattered across the whole width of the universe, never varying by even the smallest amount? If they are tiny separate objects, this is a flat miracle with no explanation behind it at all. Hold on to that puzzle. Keep it right there in your hand, because it is going to crack this whole thing wide open in a few minutes. For now, just carry it with you. Here is the third strange thing, and it is the one that finished off the brick for me. Bricks last. A brick sitting in a wall is made of the same stuff today that it was yesterday. You can break it, sure, but then the pieces are still lying there. Stuff does not simply appear out of nowhere, and stuff does not simply vanish into nowhere. That may be the deepest gut feeling we have about objects of any kind. Now watch this very carefully. Take a single bundle of light energy, what we call a photon, and give it enough energy and let it pass close by the nucleus of an atom. The photon can vanish completely, and in the place where it was, 2 brand new particles appear. An electron, and its strange mirror twin out of the world of antimatter, the positron. Those 2 particles were not hiding folded up inside the photon, waiting their turn to come out, like coins shaken loose from a piggy bank. They were not in there at all. They were made. New. Out of light. And it runs the other way just as easily. Bring an electron together with a positron, and the 2 of them disappear, the whole pair gone. And where they had been, you are left with a flash of light flying off into the dark. The matter did not break into smaller pieces. It did not crumble or chip. It simply stopped being matter and turned into light. So I will ask you again, with a perfectly straight face, what kind of brick is conjured up out of a flash of light and then later snuffed right back into light? You cannot carve a wooden block out of a sunbeam, but you can make an electron out of light and turn it back again all day long. Whatever the electron is, it is not a little permanent thing. It comes and it goes. And let me give you one more, because the bricks deserve a thorough burial. Let me take all the matter away entirely. Imagine the emptiest box you could ever build. Pump out all the air. Take out every speck of dust and matter. Shut out every ray of light. Cool the whole thing down toward the coldest cold there can be. Now you have nothing inside. True empty space. Surely now, at last, there is nothing happening in there. But there is. Even inside that perfect emptiness, something is trembling. We can measure it. Empty space, the pure nothing, can give a tiny push to 2 metal plates held very close together. It nudges the light that comes off an atom, shifting it by a hair. The nothing is doing something, and it never holds still. Whatever space turns out to be, it is not an empty stage waiting patiently for bricks to be set down upon it. The stage itself is alive. So look at the wreckage we have made. We wanted little hard bricks. Instead, we have found pieces with no size at all. Pieces that are all impossibly, perfectly identical. Pieces that are born out of light and die back into light. And an emptiness that hums and pushes and refuses to be still. Every single thing we believed about bricks has failed us. The picture is finished. Sweep it off the table. So if the world is not made of little pieces, what under heaven is it made of? Let me build you the right picture now, slowly, from the ground up. And I give you my word, by the time we are through, every one of those strange things we just saw is going to make perfect, easy, obvious sense. Start with something you already understand. A field. The word sounds grand and technical, but you have known fields your entire life. The temperature in this room is a field. At every point in the air there is some temperature. A little warmer up near the ceiling, a little cooler down by the floor, a number, sitting at every point in space. That is all a field really is, some quantity that has a value everywhere you look. The wind is a field too. At every point the air is moving at some speed in some direction. Point to any spot you please, and the field has a value waiting there for you. Now I want you to imagine a different kind of field. Not temperature, not wind, but something far more fundamental than either. Picture a field that fills the entire universe, every cubic inch of it, the air around you, the inside of your own body, the vast black gulfs of empty space between the stars. There really is such a field, and we call it the electron field. And here is the thing you have to swallow. It is not a field around the electron. The electron field is everywhere, all the time, whether there happen to be any electrons in the neighborhood or not. It is a feature of space itself, stretched through all of existence like the most enormous, invisible, perfectly calm ocean. So then, what is an electron? An electron is a ripple in that ocean, a disturbance, a little knot of vibration in the electron field. And here is the part the quantum world absolutely insists upon. When you pour energy into that field, the field will not accept just any amount you offer it. The energy has to arrive in whole lumps, in separate complete packages. One lump of vibration in the electron field is one electron. 2 lumps, 2 electrons. You can have 1, or 2, or 100, but you can never have 1.5. The lumpiness, the very thing that fooled us into thinking of little particles in the first place, is perfectly real. But it is the lumpiness of a wave that can only ring in whole units, the way a bell can only chime a whole number of times and never half a chime. Now watch all our puzzles dissolve, one after another. This is the part I have been waiting for. Why does the electron have no size? Because it was never a little ball to begin with. It is an excitation of a field, and asking how wide it is very nearly the same as asking how wide a musical note is. A note is not a tiny object with edges that you could measure off with a ruler. A note is a vibration, a pattern of trembling spread through the air. It does not have a width, because width is simply the wrong sort of question to ask about it. And the electron is exactly the same. We were out there measuring it for edges, for a surface, for an inside, and finding none, because there was never a pebble there in the first place to have any edges. There was only a ringing in a field. And now, the puzzle I told you to hold in your hand. Why is every electron exactly identical to every other one? Here is the answer, and it is the most beautiful thing I am going to tell you tonight. Every electron is identical, because there is only one electron field, and every electron, every single one of them, anywhere in the entire universe, is a ripple in that one same field. They are all the same kind of wave, in the same medium. Of course they come out identical. It would be downright astonishing if they did not. You never lie awake at night wondering why 2 waves out on the ocean are made of the very same water. They are made of the same water, because there is one ocean. And every electron is made of the same electron field, because there is one electron field, ringing here in my fingertip, and ringing out in that distant star with precisely the same note. The miracle of the factory that somehow stamped out endless perfect copies, that miracle has just evaporated in front of you. Nobody stamped out anything. There is one field, and the lumps in it could not be different from one another if they tried. And why can a particle be born out of light and die back into light? Because light is a field too. The thing we call the electromagnetic field fills all of space, just like the electron field, lying right on top of it, sharing the very same room. A photon, a piece of light, is a ripple in the electromagnetic field exactly the way an electron is a ripple in the electron field. And energy can slosh out of one field and into the other. When a bundle of light carries enough energy, and the conditions are right, that energy can pour out of the electromagnetic field and splash down into the electron field and make ripples there, an electron and a positron. Nothing was ever hiding inside the photon. Energy simply moved house from one field to another and made fresh waves the moment it arrived. And it can move right back again. The creation and the destruction that seem so utterly impossible for little bricks is the most natural thing in the world once you are thinking about fields. Energy changes which field it happens to be rippling, and we say a particle was made, or a particle was destroyed. And the trembling emptiness, that space which would not hold still? Of course it would not. Empty space is not empty. It is filled everywhere with all of the fields sitting quiet. A pond with no waves on its surface is still a pond full of water, right up to the brim. And the quantum rules, the same rules that will not allow any small thing to sit perfectly still, will not allow the fields to hold perfectly still either. So even with no particles anywhere about, even inside the emptiest box you could build, the fields go on trembling, just a little, forever and ever. That faint trembling is the hum we measured. The nothing was never really nothing. It was the fields, lying at rest, and the fields at rest are never quite at rest. So step back now and take in the whole new picture all at once. The universe is not a great box crammed full of tiny hard pieces. The universe is a small handful of fields, each one spread out through all of space, lying over one another, every one of them able to ripple and ring. There is the electron field. There are fields for the quarks that build the heart of every atom. There is the electromagnetic field, whose ripples we see as light. There is thought to be a field that lends the other things their mass. Just a few of these, filling absolutely everything, everywhere, all the time. And every particle you have ever heard the name of, the electron, the photon, the quark, every one of them is simply a lump, one single quantum of ripple in one of those fields. The word particle is a leftover from the old days of bricks. It is really nothing more than a counting word. It means one lump, right here. It was never supposed to mean one little ball. Now I have to be straight with you, the way a person ought to be. Are these fields the true bottom of everything? Are they the real bricks after all, just spread out smooth instead of bunched up into balls? Maybe. We do not know. It is entirely possible that the fields themselves are ripples in something deeper that we have not found yet, some structure underneath them that we have simply not been clever enough to see. There are people with guesses about that. Some of the guesses are very beautiful, but I am not going to hand you a guess and call it knowledge, because that is not honest, and it is not science. What I can tell you, what we are genuinely sure of, is this. As far down as anyone has ever dug, we do not find little hard pieces waiting for us. We find fields. The bricks keep failing to turn up. Every time we expect to close our hand around the final solid pebble, we find a ripple instead. So let me carry all of this the whole way back to you, sitting right there feeling perfectly solid in your chair. You are not a pile of tiny bricks. You never were. You are a pattern of vibrations in a few fields that fill the whole universe. That feeling of solidity, the firmness of your own hand, the hardness of this table I keep knocking on, is not little balls pressed up against little balls. It is fields refusing to let their ripples overlap. The electron stuff in my hand pushing back against the electron stuff in the table, wave shoving against wave. The solidity is real. You can lean your whole weight on it. But it is the solidity of music, not the solidity of masonry. And here is the thought I want to leave resting in your hands, the one I hope you find you cannot quite put back down. Every bit of electron in your body is the very same electron field as the electron sitting in the most distant galaxy you could ever turn a telescope toward. One field, rung like a bell in the tip of your finger and rung again with the identical note, 10 billion light years away across the dark. You are not built out of separate little things at all. You are a disturbance, a standing pattern of ripples, in something vast and seamless that reaches out in every direction without any end. We told ourselves the story of bricks, because our hands are made for stacking and breaking and stacking again. It is the most natural picture in the world for a creature that builds things out of stones. But nature was never stacking anything. Nature, all the way down as far as we have ever managed to look, was doing something else entirely. Nature was ringing. So here is what I would like you to sit quietly with tonight. If you are not made of little separate pieces, but of waves and fields that spread through all of space without a single gap between them, then tell me, where exactly do you end? And where does the rest of the universe begin? Tell me where you think the true edge of you really is.